Do 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 do. You failed again. Don't you see that you are a failure? You failed again. Praise Jehovah for that failure. So I was having a conversation with my neighbor across the way. And then he said, a lot of people lack understanding of what it truly means to be helpless. Nature, because he's a pagan, doesn't do much for the helpless. As I was saying, it's our responsibility to help those that can't help themselves. I truly believe we are our brother's keeper. This is one of the sins of Cain under Adam. You are to take care of the widow, the orphan, and the poor, those that cannot take care of themselves, those that have no inheritance. So I tell him that's part of the curse of being kicked out of Eden, because, there is truth to that. To have food on the table, you should be out in the field sweating. This is part of the promise to the poor, that those who have an inheritance, those who have land, will leave much of it on the vine so that those that don't have any can come and glean off of that. And this is part of the error of our society, going away from Torah and going to this socialist welfare schemes. Torah takes care of the poor, the orphan, and the widow. Now, really think about that. What would society be like if every 7 years all of your debts were erased? Do you know how much more all of us would have in the ability to help others? Shalom and good evening, Mr. Rambo. So then he says this next about Eden. Well, you don't leave a loaded gun around kids. Like, this is a false analogy. Leaving a choice of the tree of life and the tree of good and evil is not like leaving a gun. Yes, eating from the tree of life would bring death. But you, as the loving father, tell the son, who would be an adult, capable of knowing right from wrong, and this is the state of Adam and Eve, that's why they were punished, they knew right from wrong, that if you eat from this tree, you will die. This is the ultimate test. Will you trust God, or will you trust your heart? And that's what Nahash appeals to. So let's go through the rest of his argument here. Don't touch that gun. Not if you're a loving father. And I don't agree with that. A loving father is going to raise a man who is able to deal with problems, who can deal with failures. And this is what I really want to get home here. It is okay to fail. It is not okay to blame someone else. You take that danger away so that they don't have to suffer the trauma of a major accident. Is that what we do? What would be the point of free will in this created realm if God just goes and, I'm going to remove that, I'm going to remove that, that's dangerous. And clearly, with that attitude, why is it so dangerous in this realm? Even in my yard this year, there was a copperhead snake right underneath of our trailer. Why didn't God remove it himself? Why did I have to go through the trauma of having this animal taken care of so it would not harm me or my family? For a being that can create literally everything, a little fencing around the tree would have saved a whole lot of heartache. Okay, a little fencing around the copperhead could have saved me a whole lot of heartache. A little fencing around the ticks in the land, the thorns in the land, could save us all a little heartache. We all have free will. All of us have free will. And comes down to the blessings and the curses. Being a deity who can see the past, present, and future, then he knows what was coming and let it happen on purpose. This is the this is a common agnostic atheistic argument. He knows the future. He knows you're going to fail. So him allowing failure is proof that he's not a loving God. You see the problem here? This is fundamentally a problem. When you trust in yourself, you're going to paint God into a box. So let's look at Adam and Eve. And we'll make a decision. Was God cruel in giving Adam a choice to trust him? Genesis 2:4. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. In that day, Yehovah Elohim made earth and heaven. Now, no shrub of the field was yet in the earth, and no plant of the field had yet grown, for Yehovah Elohim had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was no man to cultivate the ground. But a stream would rise from the earth and water the whole surface of the ground. And then Yehovah Elohim formed man from the dust of the ground, and he breathed into his nostrils the ruach of life. That's what breath is in Hebrew, ruach. And so the man became a living being. And Yehovah Elohim planted a garden in Eden toward the east, and there he placed the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground, Yehovah Elohim caused to grow every tree that is desirable in appearance and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it divided and became 4 rivers. The name of the first is Pishon, and it is the one that went around the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. Now the gold of that land is good. The bdellium and the onyx stone are there. And the name of the second river is Gihon. It is the one that went around the whole land of Cush. And the name of the third river is the Tigris. It is the one that went east of Ashur. And the fourth river is the Euphrates. Then Yehovah Elohim took the man and set him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate it, to keep it. And Yehovah Elohim commanded the man, saying, from any tree of the garden you may surely eat. But from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it, nor in that day eat from it, you will surely die. So this is the test. And clearly, and this is important, this is important because it defeats their straw man. Their straw man is that he's like a child that didn't know better. That's utterly false. If God gave this command, and yes, God knows the outcome of your choice, but he gives a command knowing you are capable of choosing to do what is right. For in that day, the day you eat from it, you shall surely die. Then Yehovah Elohim said, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him. And out of the ground, Yehovah Elohim had formed every beast of the field, every bird of the sky, and he brought each of them to Adam. I lost my place. Each to the man to see what he would call it. And whatever the man called the living creature, that was its name. And the man gave names to all the cattle, to the birds of the sky, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam, there was not found a helper suitable for him. And so Yehovah Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and he slept. And then he took out one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. And Yehovah Elohim fashioned the rib, which he had taken from the man, into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And the man said, this one is finally a bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, and this one shall be called Isha, because this one was taken out of Ish. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. Why were they naked and not ashamed? Because they were still clothed in light. And there is a psalm about that. See if I can find it. Negative. Yeah, here we go. Psalm 104. All right. Bless Yahweh, O my soul. O Yahweh, my Elohim, you are very great, and you are clothed with splendor and majesty, wrapping yourself with light as with a cloak, stretching out the heavens with a tent curtain. So the reason they were naked and not ashamed is before they defiled themselves, they were dressed like the Creator. They were made in His image. They had on light that was made on the first day as a cloak. So let's go to the next chapter, Genesis 3. Now Nahash, and that's what the Hebrew word for serpent is, was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, indeed, has Elohim said, you shall not eat from any tree of the garden. And the woman said to Nahash, from the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat, but from the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim said, you shall not eat from it, and you shall not touch it, lest you die. See, Adam heard the command from Yahweh. Eve heard the command from Adam. And Adam added this fence that he's talking about to protect his wife from sinning. And I find this fascinating because they always do this without even realizing it. Always. The fence didn't stop the sin. And the fence will never stop the sin because you have to have a heart that is solely devoted to the Creator. Hear, O Israel, that Yahweh your Elohim is Echad, one. Echad can mean unity, but in this case it clearly is one being. You shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. See, Adam and Eve were given this test. Will you love Yahweh with all your heart, soul, and might? And the answer was no. In fact, Adam so feared his wife making the wrong choice that he added a fence to try to prevent her from doing what was wrong. And this is something you see religious people doing today. Like, I want to stop, and not even just religious. I mean, you listen to his text, he's talking about his own children, right? I want to stop my children from possibly getting hurt. They put up these guardrails so they have no risks. Without risk, there is no reward. Without failure, there is no real growth. I mean, look at like a stalk of wheat. A stalk of wheat grows for one season. It grows its kernels, right? Its seeds. At the end of that season, that wheat dies and falls over so the new seed can take root. Without that failure, how can the new seed grow into a stalk in the next season? And this is the pattern that creation shows us. And Nahash said to the woman, you surely will not die, for Elohim knows that in the day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. See, this is the temptation that this Nahash gives her. Like, you don't need to trust Yahweh. If you eat this, you can trust in yourself. You will be like the Most High. And this is the great, great deception. You know, and look at Psalm 10. It's one of my favorites now. Why do you stand so far away, O Yahweh? Why do you hide yourself in times of distress? In his lofty pride, the wicked hotly pursues the afflicted, and let them be caught in the thoughts which they have devised. For the wicked boasts of his soul's desire, and the greedy man curses and spurns Yahweh. The wicked in the haughtiness of his countenance does not seek him. All his thoughts are, there is no Elohim. and his ways prosper at all times, and your judgments are on high out of his sight. As for all of his adversaries, he snorts at them. He says in his heart, I will not be shaken. And this is important too, because we're going to get to the part where Yahweh comes down to confront those that violated his commandments. This is so crucial. That heart that is soft to conviction. A heart that knows when you've done wrong, and you fall on your knees and on your face and beg the Creator, Yahweh, for a chance to redeem yourself, to repent, to forsake the sin that he hates. But those that they want God to protect them from sin, they say, when I sin, I will not be shaken. I've done nothing wrong. From generation to generation, I will not be in an adversity. His mouth is full of curses and deceit and oppression. Under his tongue is mischief and wickedness. He sits in the places of the villages where one lies in wait. In the hiding places, he kills the innocent. His eyes stealthily watch for the unfortunate. He lies in wait in hiding places, a lion in his lair. He lies in wait to catch the afflicted. He catches the afflicted when he draws him into his net. And this illusion of hunting and fishing after men is very interesting. Nimrod is called the first hunter of men. He was a great hunter, but not of animals. He caught men in his net to become his slaves. He crouches, he bows down, and the unfortunate fall by his mighty ones. He says in his heart, God has forgotten, and he has hidden his face, he will never see it. This is what I hear from so many people, whether they are New Age, pagan, atheist, agnostic, Christians, Jews. So many Jews, especially Talmudists, believe that they are righteous for just being born a Jew. Arise, O Yahweh, O Elohim, lift up your hand and do not forget the afflicted. Hallelujah. Why is the wicked spurned, Elohim? He said in his heart, you will not require it. You have seen it, for you have beheld mischief and vexation to take it into your hand. And the unfortunate commits himself to you. For you have been a helper of the orphan. Break the arm of the wicked and the evildoer. Seek out his wickedness until you find none. Yahweh is king forever and ever, and nations have perished from his land. O Yahweh, you have heard the desire of the humble or the afflicted. Those that, this is the same idea that, when the affliction comes, you reflect on the curses and find out, why am I being afflicted by the wicked? So you can repent. You will give strength in their heart, and you will cause your ear to give heed, to give justice to the orphan and the oppressed, so that the man of this earth will no longer cause terror. It's so important to have a heart to help the oppressed, the orphan, the fatherless, and the widow. This is crucial stuff here. If you want to know the heart of the Creator, Yahweh, this is his heart, that you help the oppressed. Then the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise. So she took it from it in its fruit and ate it. And she gave also to her husband with her, and he ate it. And I just did a study on this. It's really interesting. Who are called wise men? It's a phrase that's used kind of back and forth. Like there are these positive allegories and negative allegories. The negative ones are really interesting. Excuse me. Now it happened that in the morning his ruach was troubled, so he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. And Pharaoh recounted the dream to them, but there were none that could interpret them to Pharaoh. See, the wisdom of men is not going to give you the wisdom of Yah. Look at Exodus 7:11. And then Pharaoh also called for the wise men and the sorcerers, and the magicians of Egypt did the same with their secret arts. There's nothing new under the sun. Like this Egyptian, this Babylonian mystery religion, it's been around a long time, and they always appeal to wise men, men who have secret knowledge. And you see this, the secret arts, right? And all the wise men who were doing all the work of the sanctuary, which work was with him. And this should be translated skillful. And this is one of the things you got to be careful of when you're doing a concordance search in English. So if you keep going, there's another couple in here that are interesting. Psalm 49:10, for he sees that even the wise men die. And I love that idea. You know, it's so important that we be careful with where we put our trust. See, Jeremiah 17:5, right? Thus says Yahweh, cursed is the man who trusts in mankind and makes flesh his strength, whose heart turns away from Yahweh. See, when you trust in man, you can't trust in Yahweh as well. You're being double-minded. You're trying to serve two masters. Stop regarding a man whose breath of life is in his nostrils. So anyone who has breath come in and come out should not be esteemed. And this is the sort of wisdom Nahash was promising her, that she would be like Elohim. And the translation does a terrible disservice here, capitalizing that, because that's not what it meant. It didn't mean an Elohim in the heavens. He was talking about having the woman be above the man, the chief ruler, the judge, the king, the Elohim of earth. Then they heard the sound of Yahweh Elohim walking in the garden. Oh, sorry, I skipped a few here. And the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, because they no longer were clothed in light. They were not innocent any longer. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loin coverings. And they heard the sound of Yahweh Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim in the midst of the trees of the garden. And Yahweh Elohim called to the man and said, "Where are you?" And he said, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." And he said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat?" And the man did what? Did the man accept responsibility for his failures to protect the wife? No. And it's clear he was standing right next to Eve when the serpent was there tempting her. He did nothing. Let's take it a step further. After Eve had sinned against Yahweh, he knew it was sin, and she offered him to take of the fruit and eat it as well. He could have said no, because, Yahweh had made Eve, right? I mean, think about this. Yahweh had made Eve from what? From a rib of his body. If he truly trusted Yah, Yahweh could have made another woman from his body. He didn't trust Yah, and then when it came time to take responsibility, admit you failed, what does he do? He blames the woman that God gave him. Then so many religious people interpret this wrong. It's the woman did sin on her own, but she did not cause the man to sin. The man was supposed to take responsibility for his sin as the final step. But before he got there, he was supposed to protect his wife that God had given him. And then Yehovah Elohim said to the woman, "What is this you have done?" And the woman said, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." And we see the same thing again, the same pattern. This is the original sin. And this is important. I didn't get over this in my video on original sin because we're out of time. One of the things they teach is that our flesh is cursed with sin, with a sin nature. But this is not true, and we'll get to that in the next chapter. And, chapter 3 tells us explicitly what was cursed. So after he goes to the woman, he then doesn't even ask Nahash why you sinned, because it's a brutal animal. It doesn't have responsibility for what it did. Otherwise, he would have asked it. So he curses the animal to be on its belly, to eat the dust all your days, and this is the flesh of man when they die. And then the woman, she says, "I will greatly multiply your pain and conception. In pain you will bear children, and your desire will be for your husband." And this means to rule over him. And this is what makes me firmly believe Nahash was tempting Eve to be the head of the relationship. This is what is meant in Hebrew with the word Elohim. It's not God Most High. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. And this is the same word that's used in Genesis 4, and I'll show you that. So the word desire in Hebrew is, I think that's tesuka.
Strong's H8669. Teshuka.
Oh, that's a
Teshuka.
sh sound there. Teshuka. Which, if you look at that word, which I just lost, where did you go? It's used in 3 places. Well, in Genesis. And also in the Song of Songs about the desire the woman has for the husband. But in Genesis 4:7, which we'll get to shortly, the sort of desire the sin has for entering the heart of man is like the desire that Yahweh says the woman has to rule over the husband. And then to Adam he said, "Because you have listened to the voice of your wife, and have eaten from the tree about which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat from it, cursed is the ground because of you." See, this is so crucial, like why you should read this on your own. It doesn't say his flesh was cursed. It says the ground was cursed. The ground, not his flesh. In the pain you will eat of it all the days of your life. And this is like what I've seen, like coming out away from the city, having to grow my own food. It is so much more closeness to Yahweh, being out doing work in the field and sweating. Both thorns and thistles shall grow for you. And remember, I just talked about this. He set apart the thorns and thistles because the test was failed. So now they are in the world. So the only thing you can do is say, well, either he doesn't care for your safety or God doesn't exist. Or man has free will to choose the good or the evil. And God is compassionate to allow this choice. And you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you will eat bread till you return to the ground, because you were taken from it, for you are dust. And see, I told you, this whole allusion to the Nahash eating dust is about Nahash eating the dead flesh of man. That's really interesting. And to dust you shall return. Now the man called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. And then Yahweh Elohim made garments of skin for Adam and his wife, and he clothed them. And Yahweh Elohim said, behold, the man has become like one of us, to know good and evil, and now lest he send forth his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore Yahweh Elohim sent him out of the garden of Eden to cultivate the ground from where he is taken. So he drove the man out, and at east of the garden of Eden, he stationed the cherubim and the flaming sword which turned every direction to guard the way to the tree of life. But the tree of life is revealed in Torah if you are of those that have eyes to see. So let's go to chapter 4. And now the man knew his wife Eve. Yes, the man knew his wife, not the serpent knowing the woman and bearing Cain. Cain is not the seed of the serpent. I mean, it's like some of you can't even read. It literally tells you the man knew his wife, and this is literally the word for sexual relations. She conceived and gave birth to Cain, and she said, "What? I have gotten a man with the help of Yahweh." If it's from Nahash, why wasn't she crediting Nahash? And again she gave birth to his brother Abel, and Abel was the keeper of the flocks, but Cain was the cultivator of the ground. So it happened in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to Yahweh of the fruit of the ground, and Abel on his part also brought the firstborn of his flock in their fat portions. And Yahweh had regard for Abel in his first offering. But Cain and his offering he had no regard. See, we're back to this free will, right? So why, according to this argument, why didn't Elohim Yahweh set up guardrails about the proper sacrifice to bring? You know, he should have, like, once that fruit touched the ground, just let it be consumed, like the manna on the second day that was like rotting and worm-filled. Like, the fact is, it probably was. And I was talking to a brother about this recently. Like, the fact is, the fruit of the ground probably was filled with worms, and probably literally coming out from the fruit. And he still brought it forth as his offering. This is not the first fruit that he asks for, or the firstborn of the flock. It's not the best that you're giving the Creator Yahweh. It's the worst, an afterthought. This was his first bad choice. He failed in his bad choice. See, there's no accountability in so many people. Religious, non-religious, people just have no freaking accountability, no desire to admit they have sinned and done what is wrong. No accountability. If you've done what was wrong, own up to it. So Cain became very angry. He's not like reflecting. He's not searching his heart, saying, I have sinned against Yahweh. This is my fault. I failed. No, he blames his failure on Abel, on probably Yahweh. And then Yahweh said to Cain, why are you angry? And, this is why I repeat often as well. It is not a sin to be angry. Read the text. It is not a sin to be angry. And why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, your not countenance be lifted up. See, this is Father telling you the choice. Choose good or choose evil. If you do well, your countenance will be lifted up. If you do what is right, he will lift up your shame and affliction. And if you do not do well, sin is lying at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. You see this whole thing here. The anger is the invitation for sin to knock at the door. It goes, knock, knock, knock. I see your anger, Cain. But God told him he can shut that door and keep himself from murdering Abel. He had free will. He had the ability to do what was right. This is another case where, why did Father not stop the murder of Abel according to this guardrail theory, right? If he truly loves all of mankind, why didn't he just come down and strike the weapon that Cain used and stopped him from doing what's wrong? What would be the point of that? Would Cain have any free will? Would we have any free will if God just did that and said, I'm not going to allow any evil? There'd be no free will here. And there'd be no real spiritual growth. If you don't take accountability for your failures, you can't grow as a person. Deuteronomy 39, huh? Verse 15. And this is what I was saying, that the Torah is the tree of life. If you listen to its voice and turn to obey it. See, I have set before you today life and prosperity and death and calamity. And that I am commanding you today to love Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways, to keep his commandments and his statutes, his judgments, that you may live and multiply, and that Yahweh your Elohim may bless you in the land where you are entering to possess it. But if your heart turns away and you will not listen, but you are drawn away and worship other Elohim, and this includes men. That's why this is important to know Hebrew. Elohim does not always mean Yahweh or other angelic beings or other gods. It also means men of high stature, men of ruling. It also can refer to idols made of wood and stone, and serve them. I declare to you today that you shall surely perish. See, if you obey the voice of Yahweh through Torah, the Torah becomes the tree of life. If you disobey the voice of Yahweh and you choose to eat from the cursed object, the Torah becomes your death sentence. And there are a few people that understand this correctly. And I remember some of my friends, that came to follow Torah, but then believed that the Torah was only the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the tree that leads to death. This is a grave mistake. And this means you're not looking at the blessings and curses correctly. Look at Deuteronomy 29. For you know how we lived in the land of Mitzrayim, how we came through the midst of the nations through which you passed. Moreover, you have seen their detestable things and their idols of wood, stone, silver, and gold, which they had with them. Unless there be among you a man or a woman or a family or tribe whose heart turns away today from Yahweh, our Elohim, to go to serve other Elohim of those nations. Unless there be among you a root bearing poisonous fruit and wormwood. Wormwood is not an asteroid. The book of Revelation is allegory. And it will be when he hears the words of this curse that he will bless himself in his heart, saying, I have peace though I walk in the stubbornness of my heart in order to sweep away the waterland with the dry. See, this is the same thing we see of the wicked man in Psalm 10 and many other places in the Torah and the prophets. It's these people, when they hear the voice of Yahweh through Torah or a prophet or a man of God, what do they say? Like, I'm not going to be shaken. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. I never fail. I'm perfect. I will have peace though I walk in the stubbornness of my heart. And Yahweh shall not be willing to pardon him. That's right there. That's frightening. If your heart gets to a state where you hear the curses of Torah and you bless yourself even though you're cursed. This is something you have to reflect on. Reading Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 29. And I think these are daily meditations. If you have any affliction in your life, you must reflect. You must reflect on why, so that you will not be blotted out from the book of life. Thank you, Father, for this gracious study. And thank you all of those that made it here. That's correct, Rambo. Tithing was for two reasons. The tribe of Levi had no inheritance, and their inheritance was Yahweh, so they relied upon those with inheritance to bring them food, and they were supposed to give the surplus of that to help the orphans, the fatherless, and the widows, right? And it's the same thing with the general tithe of a people was supposed to go to help the people. And this is what I talked about in the beginning of the video, how, if the world was following Torah, we wouldn't need welfare because the people would be able to go into any field and pick the food they need. Right. Any questions before we log off for the evening? Shalom. Good evening. Yah willing, I can do a part 6 of the other series.